Thanks for joining us on another episode of Adaptive Adjustments. I'm your host, Auntie Nika, mental health professional, certified mediator, and founder of the youth empowerment organization, Children's in Action. So parents, today we are going to be speaking about boundary setting. Boundary setting, how it impacts on your home, and some of the solutions that you can utilize in the event that your child has decreased in their level of manners or have started misbehaving. On set we have with us Mrs. Marina Torres. She's also a member of the Parenting TT. Ms. Torres, thank you for joining us on Adaptive Adjustments. Can you tell the audience a bit about yourself, please?
Hi, good day. Thank you, Anika. My name is Marina Torres. I'm a development and education specialist in private practice for the past 33 years. I'm also co-founder of Parenting TT, a parenting organization that was founded by Barbara King, Marilyn Nathalie, and myself 25 plus years ago. We try to provide education for parents so that they can raise their children in a more friendly, conscious environment and help to raise people who are healthy and contributing members of society, and also to take care of themselves as parents.
Well, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for making the time to educate these parents on this issue of boundary setting. So, Ms. Torres, we're going to jump right into the topic. I know that there have been some complaints from parents. You have worked on one or two cases, or a couple cases actually, where there was an issue between parent and child as it pertains to boundary setting. First off, can you tell us a bit about boundary setting, what it is, what it entails?
Okay, so as a parent educator, I don't readily use the term boundary setting.
Okay.
Because when you think of boundary setting, you think of parents imposing it on children. However, I prefer to think of it as parents helping children to learn to self-regulate. Self-regulate means that they learn to manage their behaviors based on the environment. So a behavior may be appropriate at home, but it may not be appropriate elsewhere.
Okay.
So a child can run around in the yard and they're safe, they know, because of how parents have set up the yard, it's safe for them. But if they get out on the street, we want them to know that that's not a place for running. A simple example is a friend come to my office, and within the office they know they can sit and play on the floor, but they can't block doors. They can sit and play on the floor and they can play with things in a small area, but they can't throw things around. But if they want to be active, we open the door and let them go outside and we watch them based on what we are looking for.
Okay.
So it's helping setting limits for children. I know we use the word boundaries a lot,
Yes.
but when I talk about helping parents, I prefer to talk about self-regulating.
Self-regulating.
Now, boundaries cannot be imposed. We can teach children about boundaries. We do impose boundaries on children, but very often they backfire for us.
Yes.
And then we have behavioral issues, and we think children are just not obeying. Another thing I want to say up front is that there are periods in child development when children will resist or limit setting, and that is because of growth. As children, 1 and 2 year olds who are not following instruction simply can't follow it because they don't yet know how to stop themselves.
Yes.
But to a large extent, they are curious because they're learning about life. So if they come in here and this looks, oh, that attractive, they are going to take it up. A 1 year old will put it in its mouth because that's how they experience the world. A 2 year old is going to pick it up, maybe throw it to see what happens when they throw it. A 3 year old may say, I could take this home, put it in there, try to take it home. So at different levels, they're very curious. A 4 year old is going to ask you a million questions about why you set it up the way you did, and if they could do it.
Indeed.
So in terms of setting boundaries, we need to know, okay, so what do I need to do for this child? How do I keep this child safe? How do I help this child to learn, to function in this home that we're in, to keep the child safe, and also to have a little bit of order. However, as children get older, it actually gets easier if we have developed a relationship with them.
Okay.
A simple way to look at setting boundaries for children is, do I have a relationship with this child? Is this child going to listen to me? Would this child think my words are important? And for children to actually think your words are important, even if they disagree with you, you must have a relationship with them.
Okay, so the first step to self-regulating would be to establish a trusting relationship with the child.
Right. And that should have started from the word go.
Yeah, from the stage of trust versus mistrust.
Yes. Now, some children, let me tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
If a parent has more than one child,
Yeah.
they can tell you but which one was easy and which one wasn't. And the one who says, why should I trust you?
Yeah.
Children, little children will tell you that when you say you can trust, and they'll tell you, why should I trust you? Now, some people's reaction may be that that child is rude, but they aren't. This child just speaks their mind. It doesn't mean that the other two don't think so. They just may not have said it.
Right.
Because I know some children who will say that the first child say, she brave, you know, she tell my parents things I thought of, but I would have never said it. Right?
Yeah.
So it has to do with the child's temperament.
Okay.
So parents need to know that child. You need to be watching that child. You know, I remember parents saying to me, I was telling her, she's asked me how I was dealing with a particular situation. When I told her what I did and what worked, she said, my child, if I only try that, he shut down and he go in the opposite direction. I said, okay, let's think of some other things that have worked. And she came up with things that worked. I said, okay, so then we need to build on the things that work.
Yeah.
So when you talk about boundary setting, you have to know that child. If you say to them they can't cross there, it's that the child who's going to cross there and go further. So then how can you say it differently? So setting up a relationship,
Yes.
and that is an
Step
ongoing thing. You don't love your child and have a great relationship with them and it stays like that forever. No, that same child who loves you and who thinks you're the world can turn on you tomorrow because they're going through a different phase in their life, or because you had to treat with something that happened and they didn't like how you treated. And children can hate you tonight and love you tomorrow. It depends on how you respond when they're upset. So the same child who tells you tonight all the things that are bad about you because of how firm you've been will come in the morning and love you, and you must be ready to accept that love. Children tell me about parents not talking to them today is because they did something that they're upset with.
They were rude.
Or if they're talking to them, they're constantly reminding them of what they did wrong. So if you set in boundaries, you cannot be thinking about, oh, you're going to get it. No, if your focus is on punishment, that's not boundary setting. That's punishment.
Okay.
When we think about boundary setting, that's why I say self-regulation. What does this child need to be able to stop themselves without having to be told over and over again?
I like how you raise the issue of punishment because, you know, some parents or most parents would think that setting a boundary, or as you would refer to it as self-regulating, would entail punishment. How does punishment affect the child?
Well, there are different types of punishment, but the research shows that punishment, when we punish, a lot of times our mood is, I need to stop you from what you're doing. You've hurt my feelings. You've embarrassed me. You've disobeyed me. And sometimes we are very angry. So what is coming across to the child is that this person doesn't love me. Remember, you're a big person and you have the power. They have no power. And so if you're punishing, giving licks, that is another thing in terms of the child is in pain. The child thinks that you don't love them and you don't care about them. And they may think that you're overreacting to whatever they did. So they may then perceive, I am not a good person. Mommy doesn't like me. Mommy's punishing because she doesn't love me anymore.
Okay.
So sometimes, and some children respond differently to punishment. So if we are too harsh, we can actually drive a behavior underground, and the child will do it when they think we're not watching. They may not stop the behavior. They just try to think of a way. Because, right. But the thing is, a lot of times the behavior we're punishing for, the child is getting some kind of benefit from doing it. So unless we address that, so that the child will not want to do it, the child will find a way to do it. So punishment may drag the behavior underground, but it may come up again. The other thing about punishment is that we are not teaching the child what we want them to do. We are telling them what we don't want them to do. And one of the reasons why when a child is doing something, we need to get down to their level and say, you can say, I'm disappointed about that behavior. I know we've talked about it. I've asked you not to do it. You can say to the child, why you think you're doing it. Many times children will tell you, well, I don't know why. What were you thinking of? What was on your mind? What were you thinking of doesn't mean what we often may say, are you crazy? Did you go out of your mind?
Yeah.
Because I've had friends say to me, I lost my mind and I did so and so. Because the parents say, did you lose your mind?
Yeah.
And I say, no, you didn't lose your mind, but you may not have been thinking about the consequences. So parents need to really say, what were your thoughts beforehand? What were you thinking of? Parents say, well, I didn't know what to do. The child says, well, I didn't know what to do. And I got this idea and I said, let me try it out.
Yeah.
And it's only after I tried it out I realized I should have thought before I did it. So then you can say to the child, so what you could do next time you get that idea.
Yeah.
Child might say, I could discuss it with you. No, but for you to be able to do that, you need to be in a particular frame of mind. Because if you think this behavior is to deliberately disobey you, if you think this behavior is to just rile you up, you cannot have that conversation. So the first thing parents have to do when a child breaks a boundary, as long as they're not unsafe, is to be able to just, maybe you could look at the child and you take some deep breaths before you open your mouth, that you only open your mouth to blow out the anger or the reaction. If the child is unsafe, of course, you rescue the child immediately.
Right.
And then you say, we need to talk about this. And you allow yourself to take some deep breaths. And you could even say to the child, let's take some deep breaths together.
I understand.
Because if you don't fix where your mood is, there's no way you can have a conversation about how you're going to deal with this situation.
It's true, you just lash out at the child in anger, and that will cause them to just hide the behavior in the future instead of actually understanding why they did it.
They will repeat it because they will repeat it because you have not yet understood why is this child breaking this boundary that and hopefully you've talked about it, because you don't set a boundary that you haven't told the child about. So for instance, you don't put your most expensive vase on the table and you don't tell your 8-year-old you don't want him kicking ball in that room. No, you don't. Because if a child likes to play football, he's going to play football wherever. So you need to say, where can you play football?
Yes.
I could do it in my bedroom, the corner of my bedroom, if I'm inside. If I can't go outside, I can do it in that little part of the kitchen. If I, you know, so you need to discuss these things as children grow.
Yeah.
You don't just punish. The other thing is, as children grow, we need to have conversations about rules. Again, so we go back to boundary setting. Boundary setting comes with values and systems that you set up.
Yes.
So as the child gets old enough to talk and you ask them not to do something and this 3-year-old argues with you and screams at you, I hate you, I'm going to tell daddy on you. And that 3-year-old just wants you to pick him up and hug him and cuddle him, and you can do that, but he's going to repeat the behavior again because he doesn't know how to stop that behavior. That behavior is born out of learning about the world.
Okay.
And it also happens when children are tired and when they are hungry, especially all children, but especially little ones. So we as older ones, when they do something we ask them not to do, we need to ask, are we supervising them enough? Is it 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old? Are you leaving them on their own too much? Are you spending time with them? Because if you're spending time with them, you'll notice certain behaviors. But what also happens with self-regulation is when children are around adults who help them to manage themselves because they play with them, also, no, we can't do that, that's not safe. No, we can do it this way, or what you think. The brain self-regulation develops.
Right.
Because the development of self-regulation happens both at the brain level and through the relationship with the parent. So the more the parent is, so when you talk about boundaries, you see, you as a parent sitting there and I'm playing here and I'm playing there, you're the boundary.
Yeah.
Little children who are now learning to walk in a room with strangers would crawl away, even before they walk, crawl away, look around for the mother, crawl back if there are strangers in the room. As they get older and more secure, they'll go a little further, but they don't go out of sight of the parent.
Right.
When you see children going out of sight of the parent in a strange place, either they are not aware, they have self-regulation issues, or they lie. They're adventurous. Some children are adventurous, and we need to teach them what is a safe distance to go. So, for instance, I was in the grocery yesterday or today, and this child left his mother, kept walking away from his mother. And when he came into the next lane, the mother was not in the next lane yet. And she came around for him. I was just about to talk to him, because I would talk to the child about that.
Yeah.
Where is your parent? And she came up to him and spoke very, very quietly. And I knew she told him something about, you cannot leave my sight, because we were in the grocery together, and he never left her again, because he kept running out of her sight and then running back as if he was playing a game. Now, a boundary there would be, you can walk to the end of the lane where I can see you, but you cannot go out of my sight. That's a boundary. If a child is having problems with that, and some children do, you need to talk about where can you do that kind of game. If I'm in the park, you can go a long distance where I can see you, or I told you it's safe. But if we're in the grocery store, you cannot leave my sight. And you discuss why. And ask the child why. Why you think so? There are strangers there. We don't know somebody. And as scary as that sounds, you need to say there are strangers who may hurt children.
So boundary setting, self-regulating. We're looking at establishing a relationship within the child and parent. Also, helping the child to understand why they're doing what they're doing and why you would like them not to do what they are doing, basically. So you reason with the child, you ask the child, okay, why did you do this? Instead of shouting at them and punishing them directly or initially, you find out from them what caused them to do what they did, right? So it's really like a therapeutic process taking place between the parent and the child.
Well, that's the relationship building, really.
Yeah.
So when you have the conversations, because most times friends cannot tell you why they do it, but when you have the conversations and say, what thoughts were in your mind? Friend may say, I was thinking, if I could do so and so and so, I wonder what it would like. So you're curious, you want to find out that.
Right.
So let's, right there and then you can say, but let's see if you can find a safe way to do it. Or if you want to do it, what you could do, I could ask Mommy. I could say, Mommy, I want to do so and so and so. Can I do that? So you see, you're building the relationship.
Right.
You're having conversations.
I understand. So you have the conversation. Parents, step one, build a relationship with your children. Right? Help them to trust you, help them to feel loved and nurtured so that you all can have a rapport. Right? Step two, as mentioned by Mrs. Torres, right? You absolutely need to not lash out initially. You need to be able to have yourself in a calm frame of mind where you can take a breath and approach a child in a non-threatening manner, help them to understand why they did what they did, right? You yourself try to understand why they did what they did and help them to come up with positive solutions so that the behavior is not repeated. So as we go back to Mrs. Torres, wonderful, wonderful explanation. I noticed you would have touched a bit on the younger children. I just want to go up the age ranks a bit more to the teenagers because they tend to have a stage like between 13 to 17 where they are very rebellious. They tend to question a lot of the parents' decisions and they tend to believe that even if the parent says to do X, that they can still do Y and get away with it. How does that impact on the family?
Well, I want to say first that talking about behaviors with children does not mean it won't be repeated.
Right.
Some behaviors are going to be repeated many times, even with discussing it. And as a parent, sometimes you may realize if you keep observing the child, you're not looking at punishment, but looking at understanding why this child is repeating this behavior, you may be able to understand what the child needs. So this child needs something, and I need to find a way to help the child get that satisfaction in a different way or meet that need. in a different way.
Okay.
So as a parent, that's why the conversation needs to happen. And sometimes it may mean talking to the child's other parent, your husband or the child's father if you're not in a relationship. Or it may mean getting advice from relatives or friends. But if it gets to a point where it's really difficult for you, you can speak to a pediatrician, your health clinic nurse, or you can seek the advice of a developmental specialist, because some children will have behaviors that are more difficult to manage because they may be born with traits that contribute to a behavioral problem. So no child chooses to misbehave by accident. It can happen because the parent has not established a relationship or the stability or spent enough time with them because they're too busy living, working, and doing things, or because a child can have a developmental problem. So children who may have autism, or children may not have autism or learning disability but can have behavioral problems by itself.
Conduct disorders and things like that.
Or may not even as bad as a conduct disorder, but difficulty with self-management. The self-regulation is actually can show up as a child who is out of control, especially if the parent is reactive to the behavior as opposed to. So I want to go back to consequences, which I didn't mention, and I'll go into the other thing you asked. That again, I said having the meetings, talking to children, we need to talk about rules and consequences. So simple rules. What are some things we can do inside? What are some things we can do outside? And the children contribute, and you're writing it down. Little ones who can have, they could draw a ball, and they could draw yard. And they could write yard, it help them spell. The ball is for outside, or they could draw a little picture, corner of the bedroom. Right? They could draw scissors cutting. If they're cutting curtains, they could draw scissors, and they could draw paper. Could put paper for cutting.
Right.
Paper that mommy gave me, scrap paper, not scissors, not
curtains.
My sister's book in a bag.
Right.
So simple things you do with the little ones, and as they get older, it can be a little more complicated, but the children need to be involved in it. So when you talk about teens, we have from the preteen level, 10, they use the term tween. Children go through changes both at the neurological level and the physical level. So some children grow very, very quickly. Girls tend to grow faster than boys do at that beginning stage. And some children grow a lot, so that they just growing out their bones in their bodies before you could blink. And the discomfort they go through, because I'm suddenly so big and everybody around me is so small. They also go through brain changes where millions of cells are changed and new cells come in. Old cells that are not used are dumped because they're preparing for adulthood. And that changes in the brain happen for thinking levels, mental, for reasoning, for language use, for physical organ changes, for girls preparing for menstruation, preparing for the ability to have children, and boys for preparing for manhood, and again for the ability to have children, sperm production and all those changes. So they're massive changes. And those changes occur in a really great way up to 18, slows down a bit, and then kind of settles down at about 25, 26. The brain doesn't stop, but it kind of settles down. The brain keeps changing all the time. Because of those changes, children do go through stages of confusion where just think of your body going through all of these changes. And I use an example of glitter in a bottle. Think of the glitter as your brain cells and your thoughts, and a bottle of liquid. And if you shake it up, you see the glitter go up and down, keeps going up and down. It's kind of going around. But if you just rest it down, everything begins to settle, and then you see clearly through it, and the glitter is still there at the bottom. So in children, as their bodies are going through all those changes, they go through a lot of confusion.
Yes.
So the adults around them need to be looking out in the same way that parents would say, the children not listening, they're misbehaving. And I say to them, have you noticed any physical changes? yes, he told me he's seen hair under his arm and there's only one little hair, but he looking.
Yeah.
Or he told me he's seen hair in his private parts. And so you need to be having those conversations, if you haven't yet, about the changes that they're going through.
Right.
Both boys and girls. You need to be talking about their bodies with them. If you haven't done it, you're already late. You need to be talking about that to help them to understand. Because when you begin, Trent would say things like, oh, that's why I'm feeling so confused sometimes and I can't think. Oh, so that's why I don't like to talk to nobody. All of a sudden, I don't want to talk to nobody.
Yeah.
So sometimes their reaction has to do with changes they're going through in their body and their mind that they are trying to cope with. Now, because of that, we also have to remember this is not your 10-year-old or your 6-year-old who did everything you wanted them to do because they just wanted to please you. This is now a child whose brain has grown to the extent that you are telling him why you want him to do something, and he realized it ain't making no sense. So he want to question. If he hasn't questioned you before, he's questioning you now.
He will,
Same thing, boy or girl. Or you may have a child who no longer wants to spend time with the family and is always in their room. So you try to get them to come outside, and they come outside and they do something odd, and you quarrel with them and send them in their room, which is exactly what they want. And then you complain with them for spending time in their room. But they've learned, if I do something wrong, I'll get to go back in my room, which is what I want.
Yes. Yeah.
So you have to be careful not to fall into that trap as a parent. And again, go back to spending time. What are you doing to help this child through this period of discomfort? Now, many parents didn't have parents who understood that either, and saying, well, I didn't have that, so why you must have that?
Yeah.
We need to pass the baton to the child at a better rate than it was passed on to us. Our parents did what they could do with what knowledge they had.
Yes.
So if our child is going through puberty and behaving in ways that you're not happy with, you need to find out why and help that child so that that child can have a better transition than you had. It must never be, I didn't have that.
So it all comes back down to having a relationship with your child. That love, that nurturing, that patience.
There's no substitute for being with your child. There's no substitute for developing a bond with your child. There's no substitute for communicating with your child. There's none. There's none. There's no book. I came across a quotation that I like. When your child is at their worst is when they need you the most.
When your
child is at their worst is when they need you the most. So I got this on a site called Neurochild. It's Dr. Tina Payne Bryson. They have some really very, very good little snippets on childhood and brain development. And they really focus on helping us to understand how behavior is driven by brain development and how our parenting role helps to facilitate the brain development of the child. We have enough research that shows a lot of children who may have behavioral problems, maybe not related to neurodevelopmental problems, may be related to the quality of the parent relationship. So if there is disharmony in the home, if parents are fighting with each other physically or verbally, if there is emotional abuse between partners, children are learning about life in a very dysfunctional way. And they are learning from us. So what are they learning about how life is? They are going to be confused. It's going to affect their behavior. If we want to set boundaries, but we don't have boundaries for ourselves, so you're setting boundaries for a child, but there's a parent who's alcoholic, who's using drugs, who does not keep good routines with the family, who doesn't spend time with the family. What is this child learning about stability and boundaries?
True.
So you're trying to teach one thing, and the child is seeing something else that keeps the child unstable.
And that's something that a lot of children to date, they mention it, they actually tell the parents that, but you don't do that. So why you want me to do it? That's so true. So parents, you all need to have boundaries for yourselves. You all need to show your children love and affection. You need to understand that they are going through their phases, psychosocial developmental phase of role confusion versus isolation for the older ones, right? And you need to be able to show the kids that you have that relationship with them. Trust and love. There is no substitute, according to Mrs. Torres, for communicating with your child. There is no substitute for spending time with your children. So parents, you all need to make the extra effort to be there for them, be their keepers, help them to understand you so that you can understand them. And that way, the self-regulating process would be a success.
More likely to be a success. Now, I want to say there are always caveats. You can be doing the best you want to be as a parent. You can be developing good relationships. Your children talk to you about things, and the school calls you and this child has done something, and you say, how could you do that after all what I've taught you? So there are some children, when they're going through certain phases, that they will have impulsive behaviors. That is, their friends are doing it. They want to do it. It looks exciting, especially in the teen years. It looks exciting. It's something they want to do. And they were caught in a weak moment, maybe a moment of difficulty. Or they were pressured enough, and these friends are important to them. Because during the teen years, social relationships with other people and being accepted and being like their friends is important.
Yes.
People always ask why it is some children are not easily led and others are. Personality differences. So if you know your child is more easily led, you need to, the people say take in front?
Yeah.
You start talking. So you come home and you say, these children want to do this and so and so, and you say, okay, tell me about it. Don't jump in and say, you don't better do that. No. Tell me about it. And what do you think will happen if they do this? Do you think that's something you want to do?
Yeah.
And what do you think will happen if you do that? What doing, and this is something we see with children who are considered bad children. They tell me, but when I do that, I feel so and so and so and so. And we talk through it, and I say, okay, so what else you could do that could help you feel so?
Yeah.
And they say, but you have nothing else that could make me feel so good and so strong and so popular. Yes, but what is the consequence of that popularity? Get in trouble, I get suspended. So is it worth it? Teens will take risks. We have to help them to look ahead. Is this worth it, this fame for a few moments for trouble? And you really have to have those conversations with some children. Some children would say, not my mother, I ain't doing that. Some children will say, I ain't gonna get caught.
Yeah.
I can hide that.
Yeah.
And then they get caught and they wonder how they get caught. Teens do that, and the reason why teens would take risks, they are more likely to take risks, is because of the same brain development I'm telling you about. The critical thinking part of the brain is not as developed as the pleasure part of the brain. The pleasure part that makes them want to feel good and feel big, because I do that, I bully him, I carry the bag, I put it back in the bin. That felt better than because the critical thinking part isn't there yet. It's only after they've gotten in trouble.
Yeah.
Because parents would say, but he says he's sorry and he's crying and stuff and he's doing it again. I said, but did you discuss? Let's see. And you really have to discuss this pleasure thing that they're getting. Why is this child going after it so much? Is it that there's not enough pleasure elsewhere? I remember one young man said to me, but I ain't getting no pleasure at home. We don't do anything as a family that I enjoy. So then I said, okay, so we need to have a family meeting. Okay. What are the things that need to begin happening? They were not having meals together. They were not spending time together. They were not playing games together. So I gave them, and they were all teens. Everybody was past 12 in the home. And I said, okay, so come up with a plan and discuss with your parents. And when they came back and we talked about it, they had already begun to organize themselves and pull the parents in. And as a result of that, there was a lot more pleasure and happiness in the home. So when friends say, let's do this and do that, this child was thinking, I don't want my parents to be unhappy. So it shifted from, I need to be happy, to, I don't want to embarrass my mommy and daddy. I don't want my parents to feel embarrassed about me.
So the child now developed that sense of responsibility.
And belonging. So,
Right.
so still wants to be like the peers,
Right.
but the family became the most important foundation, which it has to be. That even though I want to belong to my peers, I'm not risking my family belonging for that. I can still be my friend, but I'm not going beyond a certain thing, which is what you want children to do. Because that's how they end up in the gangs. The gang provide a sense of belonging.
Yes.
And once you get in the gang, you have to be committed to the gang. But you want the child to be loyal to the family.
I understand. So as a family, you need to have that engagement taking place.
You have to have it for them to be loyal to this family and not see the friendship is still important, but the loyalty is who loves me, who cares about me, who's looking after me. And if I do that, what can happen to me?
Yeah. Totally understand. Totally.
That
totally
loyalty that we must have to our friends should never, while it's extremely important, I'm not ruling that out, it must not overrule the loyalty to family. Now, I have children who say to me, they're not going to do that because of what it could do to their mother or father, or what could happen to them and the embarrassment. They still giving mommy bad face home, eh? Because they don't like how she, these rules you have for me and stuff.
Yeah.
But they're not risking it. But there are children who will risk it because the need for that feeling is still too strong, and those children need counseling. In counseling, a lot of them do very, very well. Few of them don't. A lot of them do well because children say to us, I feel embarrassed. I don't know why I am doing this. I know I shouldn't do it. Again, that goes back to the self-regulation. So some children have a harder time with self-regulation than others.
Based on their engagement with the family, communication with the parents.
And sometimes, like I go back again to their own personality and temperament.
Yes. As I say temperament, some people would say they get that from the father or they get that from the mother. What's your take on that?
Temperament is personal.
Right.
Each child has their own time in the womb, their own space in the womb, that nice little nest egg in the womb.
Yeah.
So their temperament, even though they pull characteristics from their gene pool, mommy, daddy, they form their own temperament. So each child comes into the world with their own temperament. But yes, people may say they have traits like their dad, or they have traits like their mom or their uncle.
Yeah. But it all comes from the child.
Well, so children do learn from us. So I'm not ruling that out.
Yeah, yeah.
Children do learn from us. But parents, you hear parents say, but nobody in the house like that. Nobody behaves like that. And that might be quite true. Because how the child's characters play out is singular to that child. But granny might say, your daddy was just like that, but he wasn't as bad. Your mommy was just like that, but she was worse than you. You hear people say those things. But again, the way we respond to the child is an important aspect. And each case is singular. Each case is individual. So I don't want to say all children are the same. Children respond differently depending on the mix of the dynamics of the home, the relationships. Some people even say take the child out of that school and put them in another school and behavior change. So some children work better in some environments than other environments. That comes back again to the parents knowing the child, observing and knowing the child.
Okay. All right, so I just want to do a quick recap. Parents, you heard it from Mrs. Torres, co-founder of Parenting Titi. Right? She is saying today that boundary setting, also known as self-regulating, it entails you parents as well. You all have to be a practical aspect in it. You all have to show the children love and affection from birth. Come all the way up. Help the children to understand what you expect of them. You yourself try to understand the child and what they expect of you. When the child does something that you do not like, it's not about just initiating punishment, but instead having that time out with the child to understand why they did what they did, helping them to understand why they should not do it and what you expect from them in the future. A child's behavior is associated with their environment, is associated with their level of trust. It's also associated with the amount of love and affection that you give unto them. She's also telling families to start doing different stuff as a unit, start creating different games, schedules, where you all can feel as one, and in that instance, the child is now going to choose family first over what they are being influenced by peers. So, Mrs. Torres, is there anything that you would like to tell the listening audience before we leave?
Two things I want to say. One, because of COVID, a lot of parents have complained about children's behaviors, but yes. I ask parents also to look at themselves. Mental health has been severely affected, both for parents and children, because we have been in a pandemic living for 2 years. That's an extremely difficult situation mentally. Parents are supervising children while working in schooling, and parents who have more than one child have it really hard. Mm-hmm. So that is impacting everybody. It's impacting children and parents, and there are more behavioral problems. That is normal. So parents and children need to have what you call meetings with each other to talk about how they're coping, to play little games together, to go for little walks or do things that they could get outdoors. One of the things I started doing is going outdoor at night, in the evening. I feed my dog and I walk and I look at the stars and I do some exercise. And I have no children at home I have to see about. I'm saying to parents, you need to get outdoors, even if it's for 15 minutes, with the children, relax, jump rope, hopscotch, watch the flowers, whatever. The other thing is, when we're dealing with children, it's better to be kind than right. So if we have a child who is having boundary problems, ask yourself, am I being kind to this child in the way I'm dealing with them? Even if you're coming up with consequences and you want to do it together, it cannot be mean. It's better to be kind than right.
Parents, it's better to be kind than right. So, Mrs. Torres.
Miss Torres.
Miss Torres, I want to thank you for being on set with us here at Adaptive Adjustments. Your knowledge is beyond the chain. I want to applaud you for the work that you've done so far, and I know that you would be an instrument in a lot of families' lives, right? So thank you so much for making the effort to be here on Adaptive Adjustments. I do appreciate your presence.
You're welcome.
Right? Parents, I want to remind you guys that you can check us out if you want to get a rerun of this episode. You all can log on to Gael's page. You can also log on to our Facebook channel at Adaptive Adjustments with Auntie Nika, also our Facebook page, and feel free to check out our Instagram page as well, Adaptive Adjustments with Auntie Nika. Guys, this brings us to the end of our episode, but before we go, I just want to shout out Bling Dong Apparel for my wardrobe this afternoon. I want to thank you all so much for making it possible. Also my hairstylist. Yeah, Bling Dong Apparel. You can check them out on Facebook as well. And they have a website at blingdongapparel.com. Also my hairstylist for this wonderful curls. Right, you all can check her out as well, Michelle. So thank you for that, guys. I want to thank everyone that made today's episode possible. So guys, we dealt with boundary setting, also known as self-regulating. I'm your host, Auntie Nika. See you on our next episode.